For decades, we thought we understood the Middle East. Strong states, clear rules, big powers calling the shots. But today, that whole order has just completely shattered. We're going to break down how a region that seemed, at least on the surface, kind of stable, devolved into this new era of chaos and who the new players are calling the shots.
So let's just jump right in with the big question. What on earth happened to the Middle East? The region today looks nothing like it did just a little over a decade ago. It's a fundamental shift. So how did we get from there to here?
Okay, to really get it, you've got to look at the before and after. Before 2011, you had what we can call the old order. Think strongman leaders, borders that seemed set in stone, and global superpowers like the US having a huge say. But now, we're in a new disorder. States are weak, there are tons of new players on the field, and experts are calling it a multiplex world. We're going to get into what that really means.
All right, first, let's rewind and look at the foundations of that old order, because, as it turns out, the whole thing was incredibly fragile right from the start.
The weakness actually goes back about a century. A lot of the modern Middle East was literally born when European powers just drew lines on a map. These borders were completely artificial. They created this facade of a state, but in reality, they just mashed together different ethnic and religious groups that didn't necessarily have a shared identity. The foundation was shaky from day one.
So you're probably wondering, how did this fragile system even hold together for so long? Well, for decades, it was a pretty tense balancing act. You had authoritarian regimes using an iron fist to keep control. Then, on the outside, you had superpowers like the US and the Soviet Union constantly intervening to prop up their allies and stop things from falling apart. All this made it really, really costly for anyone to challenge the system. But under the surface, these states were often hollow.
And then came 2011, the year everything just broke. That whole facade of stability didn't just crack, it completely shattered.
The Arab Spring was a political earthquake, seriously. It kicked off in Tunisia, and these demands for change just spread like wildfire. But what started as protests for democracy, well, it quickly devolved. In places like Syria, Libya, and Yemen, when the regimes cracked down, it didn't just lead to a new leader. It led to the total collapse of the state and these brutal, endless civil wars.
The chant you heard everywhere was the people want to topple the regime. But here's the thing, when those regimes fell, they left behind this giant power vacuum. This wasn't just a leadership change, it was the state itself just dissolving. And that threw the door wide open for completely new forces to rise up.
And this brings us to the single most important idea you need to grasp to understand the Middle East today, this concept of a multiplexed world.
So what the heck is multiplexity? Okay, think of it like going in the movies. In the old days, maybe there was one big blockbuster, a superpower, playing on most of the screens. But in a multiplex, you've got dozens of different movies playing all at once in different theaters. That's the Middle East today. You have weak states, you have regional powers, and most importantly, you have all these powerful non-state groups all competing for influence on their own screens.
Here's another way to think about it that I think is brilliant. If the old Middle East was a game of chess, played by just a few powerful states, the Arab Spring basically just flipped the whole board over. Now, all these new players, militias, political movements, they're grabbing the scattered pieces and inventing their own games with their own rules.
So if states aren't the only ones in charge anymore, who are these new power players? Well, that brings us to the most critical feature of this new era, the rise of incredibly powerful non-state actors.
Just take a look at these three. In Lebanon, you've got Hezbollah. This isn't just a militia, it's practically a quasi-army that acts like a state within a state. Then in Gaza, Hamas has grown from a resistance movement into the de facto government. And check out the Houthis in Yemen. They went from a local rebellion to a force that can actually disrupt global trade in the Red Sea. These are not fringe groups anymore. They are central to how the region works.
So why are they so successful? What's their secret? Well, it's simple. They thrive precisely because those old, fragile states failed the people. When a government can't provide security or jobs or basic justice, these groups step into that vacuum. They put down deep roots, they gain real popular support. They're also incredibly resilient. Taking out one leader doesn't stop them. And they have a powerful message. They claim they're defending Arab dignity, which really resonates in a region with a long memory of outside interference.
But all this geopolitical change, this constant, messy conflict, it comes at an almost unimaginable human cost. It's so easy to forget that this isn't just about strategy, it's about real people's lives. Let's just focus on one number to try and grasp the scale of the trauma. A recent major study found that among Palestinians who've lived through decades of this, the rate of PTSD is a staggering 36%. That is significantly higher than what we see in many other war zones around the world.
And that number isn't just a statistic. Research on the ground tells us what that feels like. For millions of people, this chaos isn't just a phase, it becomes their entire life. It's a life-defining experience that eats away at a person's very sense of who they are, who their community is. It leaves these deep, lasting psychological wounds. This is the real-world price of that shattered order.
So after all this upheaval, where does this leave us? What does the future of the Middle East even look like when the old map and the old rules are just gone?
I think the main takeaway is this: there's no going back. Those artificial borders drawn 100 years ago mean less and less every day. And these powerful non-state groups, they aren't some temporary problem. They are a permanent, baked-in feature of the region's new reality.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. In a world with weakened states and all these new powerful players, a world where nobody is fully in charge, who gets to write the new rules for the Middle East? Because the answer to that is going to define the region for generations to come.